Hi. In the last video, we saw an example of the kind of automated dynamic report template that can easily be built using Dyno. And in this video, I want to show you what goes into putting something like that together. So the first thing is always going to be making a copy of the Dyno Dynamic SQL for Sheets master template. So you'll find a link to this on the Dyno website, but you can also find a link in the Dyno desktop app. So if you open up the Dyno desktop app and you go to the master templates tab, you see the links there. And once you've got the master template open, you just go to File, Make a Copy, and OK. And in your copy, you'll be able to start editing these fields in the controller worksheet. So I'm going to go back to the spreadsheet from the example in the previous video where I've already filled out these fields, and I'll explain each of them then one by one. Okay, so the first field is notes, and this is a completely optional field. It's just if you want to add any notes about the script in this row or notes about anything else in this row for yourself to keep track of things, you can enter them here. And of course, like with any of these rows or columns, you can change the width or the height if that suits you. The next field to fill out is database code name. Now, of course, to query any database, you need to have the relevant credentials like username, password, and so on. But you probably don't want to leave these credentials lying around in a spreadsheet. So what Dyno does is it lets you store your database credentials locally under code names in the database credentials manager section of the desktop app. So I have the credentials for this database stored under the code name of online sales DB in the Dyno app. And by referencing that code name here, Dyno is able to use those stored credentials to query the database. So if I just quickly pop into the app and go to the database credentials manager section, you can see what it looks like if you want to add a new database. So you type in the code name you want to use here and then complete the fields here, fill them out with the credentials for your database and click add. And it's as easy as that. Once you've got the credentials stored under a code name, you can reference them in your Dyno control sheets and you can query those databases from your spreadsheets. The next field is script name. So here you should just enter a name that describes the script in this row. This is handy for keeping track of each of the rows, but also essential if you're using the dynamic duplicator, which I'm not going to go into now because that will be the subject of the next video. Then we have script. So this is at the center of everything. This is where you put your SQL scripts and include your keys for the parts of the scripts that need to be replaced by dynamic elements. So if I just make this a little bit bigger here. In this script here, we have three keys to be replaced by dynamic elements. We have date start, we've got date end, and we've got website. I'll show you where Dyno gets the dynamic elements to insert in place of these keys in a minute, but I'm just going to run through the next few fields first. So the next field is destination sheet. So here's where you input the name of the worksheet where you want the data to go. Now, in this case, I'm saying I want the data to go to the worksheet called data top level. And I do actually have a worksheet called data top level already in this spreadsheet. It's just hidden at the moment. But even if I didn't have this worksheet already created, Dyno would still be able to run and it would just create a new worksheet with that name and then input the data there. Having said that, it's best practice to create these destination sheets in advance because it means that Dyno has to make less calls to the Google API and it'll be able to run more efficiently. The next field is incremental. So you just have two options here, yes or no. If incremental is set to no, it means that every time Dyno runs, it will completely replace the data in this destination sheet. If incremental is set to yes, it means that every time Dyno runs, it will add to the data in this destination sheet. So depending on your particular project, your particular report, it might make sense to have either one of these settings. And then we have enabled. So again, there's just yes or no here. If you click no, it means that this row will be skipped by Dyno when it's running through the scripts in the various rows. So it can be useful when you're testing out new things for a new report. You might want to disable some of the scripts sometimes because you only want certain parts to run, or there might be some other instances where you want to disable scripts. The next field is status. So this will let you know if a script has been run successfully or not. So if it's run successfully, it will get updated with success. This one's already updated because I ran these scripts in the previous video. The other potential statuses would be failed if the script has failed. This would normally be because there's actually an error in your SQL script, maybe a syntax error, something like that. Or no data. So no data will return as a status here if the script runs successfully but actually returns no data. So if you see failed or if you see no data, it's always a good idea to double check, triple check everything in your scripts. Then we have runtime, which will just update with an estimated runtime in seconds of how long it actually took to run your script. And similarly completion time, which is the time that the script finished running. Then finally, we have the fields for dynamic elements. So each of these is actually a pair of values. We have the keys on the left and we have the dynamic elements on the right. Keys on the left, dynamic elements on the right. If you remember before, the script in this row had 3 keys in it. It had website, it had date start, and it had date end. So every key used in your script needs to be entered here in this section. Then the dynamic element that is to replace that key is defined right beside it. So for website, we have here wondermart.com. For date start, we have 2008. For date end, we have 2020. In this way, Dyno gets the dynamic elements that it is to insert in place of the keys. So in this case, we have a simple cell reference to our selections tab, which is defining each of these dynamic elements. But this could be done in many different ways using any combination of Sheets formulas. For example, in the final script, in this example report, there's a key for funnels. And the dynamic element for that key is actually defined by a formula that looks to the data that's pulled in from one of the previous scripts. And then this formula gets the names of the top 3 customer funnels based on that data. So this dynamic element will vary depending on the data that gets pulled in by the previous scripts. So there's a lot of different ways you could use your Sheets formulas to help you define these dynamic elements. So there you have it. That's Dyno in a bit more detail and how to set it up in order to generate nice automated dynamic report templates.